Hey, screens are an ingrained part of modern life, from using a computer at work to watching YouTube videos on your phone. But for those of us with headache and migraine, too much screen time can actually exacerbate our migraine symptoms and worsen our mental health. Hi, everyone. I'm Adrienne DeLorco. I'm the founder of Yoga for Migraine and Beyond Migraine Coaching. In Beyond Migraine, my clients cut down their migraine symptoms 50 to 80% in just 8 weeks using a biopsychosocial approach with no new meds or restrictive diets. Today, I'm here to share healthy screen time tips for migraine. I'll share tips like phone settings that you can use to help reduce your screen time without any willpower at all, easy hacks to decrease your eye strain and blue light while working on the computer, and how to adjust just your screen time schedule to improve your sleep and migraine. So, welcome everybody. If you have questions, struggles about being on screens with migraine, let me know in the chat. What are the hardest aspects of being on screens? For many people with migraine in particular, simply the visual stimulation, scrolling, the light, all of these can have an effect. But we are on screens a lot. It might be for work, but we also use screens to be entertained, to learn, to stay connected socially. But especially with migraine, it can be helpful to have screens as a distraction when we are in pain, and help us feel less isolated using social media or having other ways to connect with our loved ones. But here's the thing, it's important to find a balance in our daily lives with screens so that screens don't take the place of other healthy activities that could do more to improve our chronic migraine. So, no shame for using screens, we all do. But I want to share from Dr. Rachel Zoffness, the writer of the pain management workbook. I love her. She is a pain psychologist who's done a lot with helping to educate people about a biopsychosocial approach to working with chronic pain. And here are some of the downsides she shared about screens. One, they keep you more sedentary. And we know that physical activity, gentle physical activity, really helps us to desensitize our pain system. The more sedentary we are, the more our chronic pain can start to spiral. So this contributes to the maintenance of chronic illness and pain for the long term. Screens can be great in the short term, but it's that long-term habit that we need to look at. What brains need to help recover and improve chronic pain and migraine is exposure to real life, which I know can feel really hard with migraine when we can feel like we are sensitive to so many triggers. But in a general sense, what our brains need to desensitize to pain, to learn how to tolerate our triggers better, is to be around people, is to be active, is to have exposure to sunlight, to be outdoors. And screens help us stay isolated and indoors more often. They can also negatively impact our sleep, which we'll talk about, particularly regarding blue light, but also just the stimulation of screens impacting our ability to downregulate before bed. And in that sense, it's stimulating our brain rather than helping to calm our nervous system. So it's keeping our brain on high alert. For many of us, it's hard. We're just constantly reaching for our phones. We have trouble just being bored, being calmer without that stimulation. And then social media is a big one that ultimately does contribute to depression and anxiety for many people, but I would say this is something that people with headache and migraine need to be more sensitive of because we have more mental health issues due to our illness and our disability. And lastly, being on screen so much and connecting with the news is stressful. It's important to know what's going on, absolutely, but we just need to monitor how obsessed we get with the news because it's a lot. It is really stressful, and we need to take breaks and be able to to consume news content in a more balanced way that is going to help us and our symptoms. So here, those are kind of all the things to watch for with screens. So to balance that out, I have 5 goals for our screen use, for our healthy screen use, and then we'll give you tips on how to put into place and implement all of these different goals. So number 1, our goal is to decrease eye strain. It's an issue for everybody, but particularly people with headache and migraine. Number 2, we want to decrease the negative impact that screens can have on our sleep. Again, sleep is so foundational to everything, but particularly for those of us with headache and migraine, we have to be very protective of our sleep. Number 3, our goal is to decrease our stress response. We want to be able to calm and regulate our nervous system, and let's find ways to decrease the activity it creates in our brain. Number 4, decrease the negative impact on our mental health. Again, with those of us with migraine, we need to be careful with our mental health and do things that we know are going to be helpful and health giving rather than negatively impact our mental health. And then the 5th goal is really just to decrease our overall consumption of screens so that we have more time and energy to increase proven health promoting activities. And so we're not giving screens so much time that we don't have time and energy to do things that are actually going to be health promoting for ourselves. All right, let's dive in. So let's talk about how to decrease eye strain. You might see me on many of my videos wearing these migraine glasses, and I get a lot of questions about what I'm wearing. So I'm going to put that in as number 1. I think anybody with headache and migraine, especially if you are more light sensitive, should invest in a pair of quality migraine glasses. So I'm going to put a couple links in the chat for you guys because this is one of the top questions I get. You want to look for generally what these migraine glasses have in common are FL41 lenses, which tend to help block blue light. There are cheap pairs I'm sure you can find on Amazon. I think if you are more light sensitive, it is worth investing in something from a company that really does specialize in migraine. So the pair I'm wearing currently are TerraMed, so I threw that in there. And these are a little bit lighter weight, less of a tint. They have the FL41 lens. I'm not getting any affiliate links or anything. These are just ones that I have. And I do wear these pretty much every time I'm at the computer, especially when I'm doing these live videos and I've got a light on me so you can see better. But I do like these because they're lighter weight and they are not too dark. Then I've got Specs glasses. These you can see have a darker tint, and these are helpful for folks who maybe are more sensitive to fluorescence, to like strobing lights, you know, a lot of visual stimuli with lights or reflections. And this brand, you can also get sunglasses, you can get prescriptions. So I'd say that would be my number 1 tip, is to get a pair if you don't have them already. And many of the targeted migraine glass brands, you can get a prescription. They are not always cheap, I agree, but I think it's worth it. And then I'll also put in the link a great segment that I heard on NPR about how to decrease eye strain when you're working on the computer, because this is something that not only people with migraine deal with, but lots of people deal with what they call computer vision syndrome. It's in this article, in this piece, they said 70% of people have computer vision symptom, and that's not even talking about people with migraine. So what happens when you're on the computer a lot is you, especially when you're scrolling on social media on your phone. In particular, they mentioned 1 hour of scrolling, particularly social media, can cause blurred vision, dry eyes, or headaches. So if non people with migraine experience this, imagine what it is doing for us who are more sensitive. We've got blue light as a part of this, but what was really interesting is that in this study that they did, it's notably more that our eyes get really dry when we're just staring at a computer or staring at our phone. So to help with that, they recommended simply blinking your eyes more, using artificial tears, and taking a 20-20-20 rule, where that means after 20 minutes of screen time, you take a 20-second break and you look 20 feet away. Ideally, if you can look out a window, look out at nature, that would be great. And just simply to get outside more and to balance the time on screens. And that really does give your eyes a rest. So check that article out and that segment out. I thought that was really helpful. All right, so we've talked some about eye strain, and if you guys have questions in particular, feel free to throw it in the chat. Next, how do we decrease the negative impact that screens can have on sleep? So in general, sleep hygiene recommendations are to reduce your screen use 1 to 2 hours before bedtime. And I have heard follow-up research on that, like, does the type of screen matter? I believe that like phones and things that you're having up close have a more negative impact than perhaps watching TV, which is far away, and maybe the blue light impact is less intense. So I recall some research on that, and really the couple of reasons why the screens can worsen our sleep when used before bed. One is the blue light exposure, which affects our melatonin and circadian rhythms. And so it makes our body's natural cues for darkness, meaning sleep, to be discombobulated and making it harder to fall asleep. The second reason is being on a phone or even watching like kind of an intense show or movie. It's very stimulating for our brain, and it's hard to just turn off our brain and ease into sleep. So ideally, you are reducing your screen use at least an hour before bed and doing something health giving, health promoting to help you unwind. We need like a gentle off ramp from the activity of the day to sleep. For many of us, maybe you've grown up just watching TV before bed, and that does put you to sleep. And so you do need to pick and choose a little bit about what works for you. But I'd say in an ideal situation, you're moving away from using screens to help you fall asleep and more towards other less stimulating activities. So that could be your bedtime routine. Maybe it's taking a shower. Maybe it's reading. Maybe you do some meditation or breathing. So these are other ways to help ease your nervous system, calm your brain before bed. Karen asked the 20-20-20 rule again. Sure. Every 20 minutes of screen time, take a 20-second break and look 20 feet away. So you're moving your eyes to a further distance, looking into the distance. So we've talked about how to reduce the impact of screens on sleep. Pretty much just changing your schedule a little bit so you reduce the screens before bed and do something else that's calming and relaxing instead. Let's talk about goal number 3, reducing the stress response that we can experience from being on phones or computers. So you might already realize this, right? If you are checking your email, you might get a spike of cortisol, if you are getting tons of notifications on your phone, this is all keeping our nervous system hyper aroused. You get, some notification about some horrible news event, and like, it's a lot. Our nervous systems are not evolved to handle so much stimulation so often. So what I suggest is not only reducing your screen time before bed, but also in the morning. And the morning time really sets the tone for the day in so many ways. And it also, by reducing our screens like at least an hour after we wake up, so you're prolonging, that transition from sleep to wakefulness, same idea. We don't want to just jump our nervous system right as soon as we get up and we're in bed and we're reading the news in the morning. That's not calming. That's difficult for our brains, and our migraine brains are sensitive, and we need smoother transitions between stimulation. So if you can delay your screen use, and none of this has to be stressful in terms of like, oh no, I peeked at my phone and now I'm going to get a migraine attack. None of this is that extreme, but we're just trying to move in that direction. What I often do now, it took me a while to train myself. I definitely used to, as soon as my phone went off on my alarm went off on my phone, I would just like start looking at my email. And I think a lot of people do. And I did need to train myself to stop doing that. And I'm going to show you some easy ways that help me. On every phone, whether it's Android or iPhone, there are ways to set up your phone to decrease your screen use. So if you're on an iPhone, you go to settings, and then if you go to screen time, then you can find all the different ways to reduce your phone notifications, to reduce the times that you have access to certain apps. This is something that was very helpful for me because as a solo self-employed person with an online business, it was really easy for me to just constantly be checking my phone and social media, and I needed to create some better boundaries with that. So I set my phone, I have an Android, so I went to settings and I went to digital well-being. And this is very helpful, and I don't know if people realize how helpful these settings are, in which you can, one, see what is your screen use, where are you spending your time, and then I set timers on certain apps so that I do not have access to social media from 5 o'clock to, I don't know, it's maybe 7:30 or 8 in the morning, so that I am limited from just scrolling aimlessly and getting sucked into the void. And then I also just recently discovered that you can have a setting that's called screen time reminders. So like if I'm on an app for like more than 15 minutes, it just has like a little gentle thing like, oh, you've been on for 15 minutes. And I think those reminders are really helpful too, to kind of nudge you of, so you're not getting stuck with that phone for longer than you hoped for longer than you intended. And then I have intentionally gone through my phone notifications to remove as many notifications as possible. So I'm not just getting dinged all the time. Generally, I keep the volume on my phone off. So all these things are helping to just let my nervous system not be overloaded. So I am more intentional with my screen use overall. So all those things, yeah, absolutely help to decrease the stress response we get from particularly our phones. Yeah, and thanks, Alex. She had some great tips about using an app blocker. Yep, and yep, adding email. I think I have adjusted that as well, because yeah, it's stressful, like reading something from work or even not work, and let's decrease it. Let's just try to make it fit into certain times of day as much as we can. All right, next, number 4 out of 5. how do we decrease the impact of phone use in particular on our mental health? And really that I would say connect most to social media. And there is a lot of research, particularly for children and teens regarding social media use and negative mental health. It's kind of a mixed bag. I'd say personally for me with social media, I do think that for people with health disorders, thanks, Alex, for the reminder. For people with headache and migraine disorders, having connections to online communities can be really supportive and help our mental health. And you can learn a lot, especially if you're watching and listening now. There are ways to learn and live more easily with migraine. Facebook groups, Instagram, there's so many great communities out there that help us feel less alone and help us meet other people with our condition, and that can be really supportive for our mental health. And then on the flip side, right, we can also see and compare ourselves to a lot of people online. And so you have to just keep this all in check and just notice how you're feeling. It's often when I'm tired, I get, or maybe even have worse migraine symptoms. I might just get stuck on the phone and it's hard to stop and it's hard to get up and change. So if you can set timers on your social media, I think that's really helpful, or have certain times a day when you check your social media, and your phone can actually help you structure that. So you're not having to use willpower to not check it as much. It makes it a lot easier. Finally, number 5, how do we decrease our screen time overall and do other things instead? And so that really is that ultimate goal, so that screen use doesn't overshadow all the other things that could be helping our headache and migraine. So in the beginning, especially if you are someone who does use screens a lot, you might need to wean yourself in certain ways. So some strategies to gently wean your screen use down is start seeing how you can shift from activities where you're watching something, maybe it's YouTube, maybe it's TV, maybe it's social media, and see if you can shift to activities that involve more listening. Sometimes for different people, that can be a little less stimulating for migraine. For other people, that might be more sensitizing to be listening. But that can start to, give us still a little bit of sense of stimulation, and still have a connection with learning, with being entertained, listening to music, and listening to audiobooks. So, and starting to use our phones more intentionally so that you are connecting personally with loved ones. So that might be sending messages, that might be FaceTime, and moving in that direction rather than like just scrolling social media of people you barely know. We want to reduce screen time and take more movement breaks and stretching. I got a question here from Jessica. These glasses I'm wearing now are TerraMed, and I dropped the link at the top. And Karen mentioned that, yeah, there's different modes that on Android, like routines for relaxation. Yeah, and they even, I saw, have bedtime routines. So our phone actually has some ways to help us with this, and that really does make it easier to not have to rely on our own willpower to do it all. And that goes, I was just talking about trying to do more movement breaks, especially if you are someone who has a desk job. I can't recommend highly enough a standing desk situation. And so I'll stand up with mine. I now am standing, and that does make it so easy to just gently switch it up, get out of your seat. And I bought this little platform that raises up and down that goes on my regular desk, and I got it fairly inexpensively off Amazon, and I do really enjoy having the option to stand up and get some more movement in a gentle way. When we are not using screens as much, let's try to prioritize getting outside. With migraine, I know there are days where that can feel impossible, but it's a long-term goal and one that with my Beyond Migraine clients, we start to do in just baby steps. It might just be going outside for a minute and then coming back inside, especially in the morning. That is like the best time to get out and get our sun exposure, which helps with our circadian rhythm, helps with our sleep, helps with our mood, especially as the season is getting darker and darker. We need to get a little more sun to get our vitamin D and just help with our mood. And then other things that can be more health promoting are breathing, meditation. These things don't have to take long. And sometimes instead of, reaching for my phone, I don't always catch it perfectly, but I'm like, you know what? Can I just sit and like take 3 breaths instead? Do I need to have my phone on the toilet or can I just breathe, right? So this is still a work in progress for me. It's such a part of our lives to have screens. There's a lot of great things we have enjoyed from them, but we need to keep it balanced, especially for those of us with headache and migraine, where our brains are more sensitive and we are more sensitive to stimuli, and screens have a lot with light and sound, stress, the blue light, etc. So thank you all so much for commenting and sharing. I will send any more tips your way, but if this was helpful, if there's one thing that you learned that you want to try to implement, I'd love to hear about it. We have our next Beyond Migraine coaching program starting up in January, and we help you implement some of these things, but as part of a bigger picture of how we can help your nervous system calm and help your migraine decrease your symptoms so that you can live a full balanced life without migraine taking over. Thank you so much for being here. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.